Naturally, you had a lot of proof. What was that proof?
It is all corroborative. See, first thing is change in the composition of the delegation, including a particular officer. 25th, the agenda was left unfinished by the Pakistanis. So they offered to extend the talks into the next day, 26/11. Two officers who were from our agencies and were part of the delegation came back by commercial flights on 25th morning itself. It's a fact. It's an admission by one of the officers who has come out publicly. Because on the 25th night, incidentally, I will tell you a little about the protocol of the government. Home Secretary was heading the delegation. The officer introduced was of the additional secretary level, and the delegation, other members of the delegations were all below the additional secretary, that is joint secretary and below level. So, by virtue of that, this officer introduced became a number 2 in the delegation. And when this offer was made to extend it to 26/11, he recommended to the leader of the delegation to accept, whereas other members, including the 2 officers from our agencies, were smelling. The officers from our agencies were having much more information, but in spite of that, due to the government protocols, generally you listen to the senior most, your next in command. So Home Secretary did that same process of listening to the next in command, accepting the extension by 1 day, and a meeting, a normal protocol meeting with that Rahman Malik, the then Interior Minister, at 3 p.m. Pakistani time.
Mr. Mani, I'll just interrupt you for a moment there, just to give the audience a flavor of what happened. 26/11 നടന്ന ദിവസം അന്നത്തെ രാത്രി മിനിസ്ട്രി ഓഫ് ഹോം അഫയേഴ്സിൽ ആരും ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല. All the senior level officers, everybody had disappeared, they all were in Pakistan. They even tried to stop Mr. Mani from being in the control room. You were asked to go to Lucknow?
Yes, on something on which I was not even concerned. And I got the job done in Lucknow on 25th itself and returned. Some gut feeling told me I returned on 25th. 26th evening, after meeting with Rahman Khan, they are offered hospitality to go to a place called Muri, 60 kilometers from Islamabad, where the communication systems were not there.
So basically, they were taken to a hill station. Now, why I'm building up this case is this Kerala connect connection. They were taken to a hill station. The entire Indian Home Affairs team was taken to a hill station where there was no mobile connectivity.
Those days.
Those days.
And at 7 o'clock or 7:30, around that time, they land in Muri, where there are no mobile connection, as per Pakistani time. That is around 8 o'clock, around the, see the synchrony. At 8 o'clock or so, the group of 10 terrorists start walking into the Koliwada on the Kolaba area, walking through up to Badwar Park.
Yes, there is very important. Now, how connected this is to Kerala now? When there is a terror ecosystem that is now working in Kerala, in certain parts of Kerala definitely, there is a lot of local support that is needed. And Mr. Mani brings out this beautifully about that night when this terrorist walked through a very, very congested Koliwada. What happened then, sir?
See, you are all coming from a coastal state. You know the culture of Koliwadas or fishermen's colonies. They are very gay. There is a lot of gaiety and celebration in the evenings around 7 o'clock, number 1. And generally the intruders or unknown people are not tolerated. They will be questioned by around every second door. They may celebrate amongst themselves, but any intrusion into their personal life, it is a fisherman's culture. That is there. That's the way they have been living for ages. including Dick Cruz, whom I have spoken to, is a famous author. He himself has also shared the same view with you for 4 years back. Any newcomer entering into their colony is seen as an intrusion into their privacy, and he will be questioned unless and until he is accompanied by somebody from their own. Somebody known to them says. And here there were 10 people, all terrorists, carrying arms, ammunitions, communication equipments, and walking through a bag. If you see that on that cargo pant, and walking through the fisherman's colony for around 20 to 25 minutes.
And they got a cab.
And when they come to Badwar Park, they get a cab. See, I take you back to 2008, no Ola, no Uber was there, Meru was there, but to get a cab, anybody who have lived in Mumbai will know, to get a cab in Kolaba in those days, in around 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the evening, used to take around 45 minutes minimum. Suresh himself has lived in Mumbai. Many of you might have lived in Mumbai. You can recall the situation. And these people got cabs immediately to go to their destinations. And what happens? Each one went to their destination and wreaked havoc. That's a different matter. So these are all very clear that some people from our own insiders were supporting the terrorists. They have received full support from the terrorists.
Yes. So that's a point which we wanted to bring in before we get into the Kerala part of it. There was also this local support which Kerala terrorists get from the local groups. Again, we will map it to Mumbai, as we call it now. And that person in front of the Taj Hotel that night, what happened to him, sir?
Huh?
The Tapori wala.
See, there was a tea shop. There was a tea shop just outside Taj Hotel where the workers and others used to take, auto walas and all used to take tea. There was a tea shop. Right from the 26/11 happened, that is Irani shop, they call it tea shop or Tapori or whatever. That is missing and nobody is reporting on that. I have spoken to several journalists also, but nobody is taking it seriously. Let us be very clear. They attack by the terrorists inside Taj continued, and Trident and all continued for almost 56 hours. They could, for 56 hours, to carry out the amount of ammunition required could not have been carried out in a dinghy in which they float over and then put in their pockets and walk through the Badwar gate. They must have had it stored somewhere near the Taj Hotel, and that is a topic which many investigation agencies are also wary of talking about. Rakesh Maria's book, Let Me Say It Now, also doesn't talk about it.
66 terror operatives in Kerala were found in Syria, Afghanistan and other places. Now we are starting to connect these two things. There is a very strong local support system in Kerala which recruits terrorists. You being in the Ministry of Home Affairs have seen this upfront and personal, but you are asked to keep your mouth shut. Can I ask you to elucidate more on this?
See, if you recall 2007 January, one gentleman, one Ahmed, there are two Ahmed, there were the Ahmed brothers. One wanted to blow up the Glasgow airport, another was deported from Australia. Both belong to Mangalore, that coastal Karnataka belt. At that time, we started collecting a lot of information, collating that. It was very clear that North Kerala and southern part of Karnataka up to Gokarna or Marudeshwar, total Islamization, total radicalization, settlements, all radical elements, jihadi elements, fidains were being made out there, was brought out. Anti-India elements were operating were all brought out. It went up to the Special Secretary level. Everybody had consented with that. But when it went to the political level, it was not only trashed some adverse action was asked to be taken against me, which my seniors were kind enough to ignore. We had predicted this. Right from north of Palakkad, you can say north of Kozhikode, till you have the Gokarna, till the entire, it's a sort of a ribbon which was turning radical. Within 1 year, we had the Indian Mujahideen headquartered at Bhatkal with Riyas Bhatkal and Yasin Bhatkal. That was the first giveaway. Later on, another case was somewhere near the Kannur area, one ICICI bank. It was found to be caught in the funding of terror case. It was a very popular case. Again, it was not flagged. The locals did not do anything about it. The local government did not. So it was thriving, plus the land jihad. In addition to that, many young youth would go, they will go to Kerala, Gulf countries, as they want, among a particular section of the community, ethnic group. Brings up, within 2 years, I don't know how he could make 1 crore of rupees, or 3 years, or 5 years, come back and make a film.
That's exactly the point. Mr. Mani was speaking about this part in a conference in Hyderabad, I think so.
Right.
Malayalam സിനിമയിൽ പകുതി മുക്കാൽ സിനിമകൾ അനൗൺസ് ചെയ്യും, റിലീസാവില്ല. ഗൾഫിൽ നിന്ന് 5, 6, 10 കോടി കൊണ്ടുവന്നവരുടെ സിനിമ തുടങ്ങും. They even get a censor certificate, but the movie is never released. That money goes into the ecosystem. Somebody is paid cash, and Mr. Mani will tell you more about it.
So, because see, let us be very clear about it. Finance is the lifeline of terrorism. And there are many ways of raising funds. I have detailed in my book also. Incidentally, it is the answer to a parliament question which was raised by a Kerala MP. Money would come, a film, I don't know what was the content, nobody knows it. Central Board of Film Certification would certify it, and thereafter it will go into the boxes, never seen the light of the day. Central Board of Film Certification, in the film industry, apart from the content regulation, which is the Central Board of Central Film Certification rules, there is no other way money can come into the system. You can monitor or regulate the film industry. And the film industry does not want it. Let me tell you an example. In 2002 or 3, Sushma Swaraj, as INB minister, had announced that film will be treated at par with the industry, meaning that it can come under regulation, it can get financial loans and all. Immediately, somehow she got shifted out of the INB ministry and made a health minister. Later you come to 2005, new companies are formed, known as brand promotion companies, like Kwan, Cornerstone, all those type of companies. They would come, they would say, I will promote the stars, I will promote this brand, I will do the branding of this. And last year, you know how Kwan was involved in drug peddling, drug financing. It was basically corporatization of black money, corporatization of collection. Under the corporate wheel, so many things were happening. Defense Intelligence Agency estimates itself in 2005-6 had said around 15 to 20% of the terror funding comes from the drug money of Pakistan. And latest estimates is around more than 32%. And these type of channels were made in the film industry. Similarly, in Kerala film industry also, films come, I do not know where the money would come from, but it will be legitimized through laundering methods. Film making was an instrument of that. And the producer who made the film, he will also start So this is happening in Kerala, and this is a very, very disturbing trend. What was happening in Mumbai in 2004 to 2014, since the ecosystem doesn't support it, now it is happening in Kerala. Land jihad. You see many places in the northern Kerala. In fact, from my side, as a security expert, I have already written of land northern Kerala. That is a part about Kozhikode up to Mangalore. Kasaragod and all, many places. A thriving practice by one Dr. Bhatt and his wife. A hospital was purchased. These are all facts. These are all reported facts in the Ministry of Home Affairs. The banks were leaking fake currency is also a reported fact. And Kashmir's funding was coming from Kerala banks was also there on a fact of report. Why I am saying Kashmir is, the way it is happening now, Kerala could be the next Kashmir if you don't open your eyes now.
Dangerous phenomenon, Mr. Mani. We appreciate that comment of yours, because Kashmir was, no longer is, but Kerala can be the next Kashmir. But you did mention somewhere along the way when we were discussing about the Popular Front of India, the SDPI, the earlier avatar of Simi. There was one politician behind this who was the father of all these terror groups. Can you name him?
I will tell you like this. Popular Front of India had cut the hand of a Professor Joseph. In 2010 it happened. Even prior to that, we had reports on that, but it used to be, some pressure used to be applied to ignore those reports. After this incident also, it was taken up, but due to intervention from the Vice President of India, no action was taken.
Vice President of India, Mr. Hamid Ansari.
Actually, I will tell you one thing. We also had some reports about these two organizations like SDPI, PFI being harbored there or whatever it is. After my retirement, I had asked one or two people to make a RTI application, but the information was denied under Section 8, saying that it is of confidential nature and it is all personal visitors of Honorable Vice President, Constitutional Authority. So we couldn't do much about it. But these are all reports. I have not seen any Taslim Rahmani or anybody else going into the house of VP and conducting a meeting, but reports were there. And because it is the same individual, I am not taking any names. When he was ambassador to India in Iraq, several raw agents, the list of R&D agents working in the embassy was handed over to by him to the Iranian government, and they had faced hell. I know one Mr. N.K. Sood who still has a limp in his walk because of the torture by the Iranians.
So basically,
he has a record of that. And post-retirement also, in December 2017 or 18, he was caught clandestinely. A meeting was hosted by where a former Pakistani foreign minister, Khalid Kasuri, was being hosted by Manishankar Iyer, where one of the key attendees was Hamid Ansari, another was your former Prime Minister of India, Mr. Manmohan Singh, and third was supposed to be the former High Commissioner of India in Islamabad. I don't know his name. This is a reported case. And Khalid Kasturi will not, 2018, was it with an agenda? Was it to destabilize the government? Was it to, see, basically, Chanakya, we take pride that Chanakya is our philosopher, but ISI and the Islamic groups are taking advantage of his thing. They are entering into India through different borders. Kerala has been on the radar since 2008 or 9 when I was reprimanded and asked to keep quiet.
Why were you asked to keep quiet?
Shivraj Patil should be asked why he asked me to keep quiet, or rather made a very unpardonable remark about that. They are all there in the file. I credit to him, he wrote it on file itself that this fellow should be, he is a disruptive person or something like that. He did not mince any words, but it's a matter of fact. So it will best is Shivraj Patil. Shivraj Patil, we all know, was party when Digvijay Singh and Hemant Karkare conceived the idea of a Hindu terror on 1st June 2006. Read my book, Myth of Hindu Terror. I have given full details of that.
Mr. Mani, here let me bring in the Kerala angle now. When we saw Mr. Kapan trying to get his bail in the Hathras case, his case was argued by Kapil Sibal in the Supreme Court. Mr. Sibal was reportedly paid by check 30 lakhs for every half an hour appearance. Later on, the gentleman who paid Kapil Sibal was picked up at the Trivandrum airport just 3 or 4 weeks ago by the Intelligence Bureau, Government of India. Do you think the entire funding mechanism which you spoke of earlier, that Kerala has developed a very strong ecosystem of funding, because without funding nothing can happen. 730 crores came into this city on one day in a truck and disappeared the next day.
See, funding is happening, is a public knowledge. Now Kerala is the new hunting ground for terror funding because of the large number of NRIs living in these states, Gulf areas. And before the Gulf financial system was robotized and rather strengthened through several checks and balances, the Havaladars have strengthened their network much stronger. And it could happen, that's the reason we are facing this problem, and there we lost the race. So that type of institutions still do exist. Manual remittances through friends and relatives. And also, I do not rule out more and more people just, see, you have to do a skill to job balancing of the people going to Gulf. You will find very surprising results. Many people who do not have adequate skills land up in jobs outside the country whereas very skilled people do not. And they go on a 2 to 3 year contract, and the amount of money they remit, where does it go, how does it go, and the amount of money they are able to save and earn in 2 years or 3 years period, that is very salient. That is where the money comes in. These are all already on the radar of the Intelligence Bureau and Financial Intelligence Unit.
Operation Chakravyu. It was one operation that is still going on in Kerala. It's a highly classified, but now in the public domain. That's why I took the name. Operation Chakravyu involves electronic tapping, big time electronic tapping. And one of the software that was used for that was the famous Pegasus.
Right. Against which again there was a litigation, there were a lot of issues. Because every such instrumentality, whenever it is used, there will be a group of people who will go and challenge this. The Supreme Court of India takes cognizance of that. As you said, the Pegasus was used, it was also used in the national interest, and it would have revealed many names, number one. Number two, you know the gold smuggling case. We are sitting in Trivandrum, we all know about all of you know about gold smuggling this. Ultimately, what was the purpose? Was it getting into the wrong hands? That is also a matter of question, because they scuttled the investigation so that it doesn't go to the logical end with all sorts of political means. Because going into the logical ends means we do not know the logical objective could have been very, very catastrophic for the Kerala. These are all live wire we are sitting on. Any wire can go live or any wire can blast and take your life anytime. It is not necessarily 2611 happening or a 711 in train serial blast happening. It could be a multiple cases because they have already taken majority of our land. They have through several means, including muscling through or paying you or outbidding your Hindu counterparts and all that. They are already into love jihad, which is now being recognized not because Hindus were shouting, now Christians started raising the issues. Perhaps love jihad is recognized by some political groups. What happens to these love jihadis? The girls end up as sex slaves in ISIS, in Syria and all. This is a harsh reality. I have said several reports on this, I have spoken several times. It is also important to sensitize this. So these are all happening, and besides that, the number of shops which come up, which do nothing, no business is nothing, but there, if you go to a random shop on the same highway towards Kovalam and any other place around the Trivandrum station and all, new shops are existing, purportedly doing no business. There is hardly any footfall.
No GST.
No GST. But they are raking in revenue. What is that revenue? How is it being laundered? These are all questions. These are all signs of a jihad happening.
In fact, Mani sir പറഞ്ഞതിൽ ഒരു പോയിന്റ് ഉണ്ട്. ഈ എക്കണോമിക് ജിഹാദും ലാൻഡ് ജിഹാദിൽ there's a very strong connotation. He has access to a lot of reports, intelligence reports, security reports when he was in the Ministry of Home Affairs, sort of which he has carried in his books. But one thing you got to remember very clearly, Mr. Mani was involved in a very famous encounter case investigation, which actually impacted Prime Minister Narendra Modi, then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Sri Narendra Modi. It was the Ishrat Jahan case. And there was a Kerala connection in this. Pranay Pillai?
Yes, there was a Kerala connection in this. This fellow called Pranesh Kumar Pillai was working in Pune or somewhere, or doing whatever criminal activities or whatever it is. He was offered a job in Gulf. When he went there, he was first converted and then radicalized. And he married a Muslim girl from Pune. And was supposedly running a perfume business. Pranesh Kumar Pillai had changed his name to Javed Ghulam Mohammad Sheikh. But he had 2 passports also, by the way. And a perfume business, I do not know how many people are in perfume business and how much they have to travel. His call records had shown lot of travels to Lucknow, Ibrahimpur, this, that, all sorts of places. There he had befriended, he had employed that Ishrat Jahan, and Ishrat Jahan and he along with 2 more people. See, lot of press has spoken about Ishrat Jahan and Javed Mohammad Sheikh. The courts have taken cognizance of that. It was a car which was carrying 4 people. 2 of them identities have been amplified in the media. But identity of the 2 other persons, Jishan Johar and Amjad Rana, both Pakistanis, illegally having entered India for the second time, once they have been put out from Jammu and Kashmir, were also killed in the same encounter, and nobody has spoken about it, including the then Home Minister, and I was roasted upon coals over the case. So this is the connection. Pakistani hand, Kerala connection, Gulf connection, all of them, and then Muzammil, the Pakistani recruiter of Javed Mohammad Sheikh, Muzammil had confessed to David Hadley. David Hadley was the person who did recce of the Bombay area, Taj Hotel, Trident Hotel, Leopold House and Chhatrapati Shivaji Station, all of them, where to enter, how to plant a bomb and all that. So they had also had this thing. This had also come in the Zakir Rahman case trial. So there are Abu Jindal case trial. So there were a lot of connections. And it is all happening in and around you. We have to be alert. That is what, so it is practically, basically, I don't say Kerala alone. You come from south of Gokarna, Mangalore, Bhatkal, Mangalore, Kasargod, Kannur, Kozhikode. Like that, it is coming gradually, it is getting, now it is entering to the local areas of Trivandrum also, especially those bordering the Tamil Nadu, where there is again a very supportive ecosystem for the jihadis to thrive. This is also a fact. So we are really sitting on a time bomb. When it can happen, when Kerala can turn a Kashmir, we do not know.
That's true, Mr. Mani. Wagaman, we saw the blast that happened at Wagaman, the training camp that was held. The Ministry of Home Affairs was aware of that camp. There was intelligence tip-off. There was an encounter later on in which a couple of people were killed by the Kerala police. A lot of this, either public domain information, because some of which he cannot disclose. That is why he's choosing his words very, very carefully. Because when he speaks in a public forum, he cannot speak. In Kerala, the ecosystem is so powerful. Especially the economic ecosystem, working from the Gulf, as Mr. Mani said. How the money comes. The guy goes there and works as a helper and is sending back 1 crore rupees as earning. And that money gets converted into land and into movies. And that is what Mr. Mani, another important thing which you mentioned in your earlier book was also the fact that ministers, there was one minister from Kerala, I wouldn't like to name him, he's no more now, but we will not speak ill of the dead. Former foreign minister scuttled a probe into a terror link. Can you speak about it?
You know one thing, Pakistani dossier had claimed, I have put the dossier, that an Indian Minister of External Affairs was in talks with Asif Zardari when 26/11 was happening. The Indian government was very happy to say that as per our telecommunication records, the Union Minister of External Affairs was not in touch with Asif Zardari. And they got away with that. Mind my word. They got away with that. I would stop at that. They got away, they escaped with that. Thank you.
Another MP from Trivandrum, his name also figured in a link, Pakistani link, isn't it?
See, I'll put it this way. In 2018 or so, a Me Too campaign was begun. All 30-year and 40-year and 50-year-old cases were raked up. Am I correct? Bollywood. And incidentally, the targets of this Me Too campaign were all in the side of Modi. Nobody from the other side. Or as long as they were on the other side, there was no Me Too campaign against them. This is point number one. The point two is, the Ministers of State for External Affairs gets a lot of information about the agendas of Cabinet Committee on Securities. It's a very, very vital organization. And ISI always likes to penetrate into that. It's a matter of fact. I have spoken about one minister in the UPA one. I don't want to allege anything, but you have also spoken about another minister of state in the UPA too. And when the NDA started, the third minister
Yes,
was not compromising.
MJ Akbar.
So he was also dragged into a Me Too case some 30 years back that is still sub judice. I am not giving any clean sheet to MJ Akbar or his personal character or what he was in 1980s. There are many stories floating around this. But the question is, was it a casting couch or it was a consensual one? We do not know. But to have raked up at a very critical time when he was Minister of State for External Affairs is the basic reason that the Me Too was a very malicious campaign to a person who was not cooperating with the agencies. That is what is the summing up.
The ecosystem which you spoke of in Kerala, അത് പൈസയാണ് അതിൻ്റെ മെയിനായിട്ടുള്ള കാരണം. The ICICI Bank case, can you speak something more about it?
No, ICICI Bank case was one of the case. ICICI banks were happening. You know, very, very interesting things have happened during those days. See how the money used to go transferred. 6 to 8 air-conditioned first-class tickets from Trivandrum to Delhi, Rajdhani, will be booked. Cash tickets. Those days, cash tickets were very common in railway bookings. But they will be cancelled somewhere in Amritsar.
They'll not go to the destination.
Nobody will travel.
And this has happened.
This has happened. Not once, repeatedly.
Thousands of crores.
So 10 times it happens. Those days, one ticket AC first class air conditioning used to be around 5,000 rupees. 6 tickets means 30,000. 10 times where 3 lakh rupees is transferred to Kashmiri terrorist.
And this is the
There are
money
many
circulation.
ways. There are very ingenious ways. They think much ahead of us.
കേരളത്തിൽ നടക്കുന്ന നമ്മൾ ഇന്ന് കാണുമെന്ന് നാളെ കശ്മീർ ആവുമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ കശ്മീർ ഫയൽസ് ഉണ്ട്, അത് കേരള ഫയൽസായി മാറുന്നൊക്കെ. There is a very, very strong ecosystem, and many of us sitting in this room are not aware of that, because what you're hearing from Mr. Mani, the former Undersecretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, is that he has seen documents, he has accessed intelligence reports, got involved in the Ishrat Jahan case, where he stopped the term saffron terror. Isn't it, sir?
Yes, saffron terror was going parallelly. Saffron terror, I had already taken a stand against saffron terror after the Samjhauta blast case. Or rather prior to that, when the reports were received, Samjhauta, then I stand vindicated. The court has cleared Swami Asimanand. Makkah Masjid, again it stands vindicated. Hyderabad. So there are all these Hindu terror. Now Malegaon 2, Malegaon 1, Ahle Hadith did it. The PK Jain, retired Additional Director General of Police, Mumbai, who was IG Nasik Rural at that time, had come out on several times and said the same Ahle Hadith did the 2008 blast, in which Sadhvi Pragya and Colonel Purohit and many others are still facing a trial. But we are seeing that more and more prosecution witnesses are now turning hostile. There is no merit in the case. About the ecosystem, I will tell you, in 2015, NIA had suggested to the court that we want to withdraw it, there is no merit in the case. But the prosecutor, Rohini Salian, who had been appointed by a UPA government and the NIA had not changed there, she went and told the court something not so desirable, saying that I am being forced to plead before you that the NIA wants to withdraw this case. Something like that. It was reported. Rohini Salian is the name of the. So that ecosystem, as Pallavi Joshi's role was explained by our friend, my previous speaker, Shafali Vaidya, लोग हमारे सिस्टम किसका भी हो सरकार that is लोग हमारे. So the Rohini Lotania is also an example of that. Otherwise, wherever the trials have happened, now the witnesses who were forced at that time are one by one turning hostile. It is a reinforcement of the fact that Hindu terror was a myth seeded by Mr. Digvijay Singh, who is in the news again recently.
Yes, that will take an entire session again if you speak about Digvijay Singh. But as we come to the close of this session, Mr. Mani, Kerala turning from a God's own country into a devil's own country. We are seeing a government here which is not proactive, which is not reacting to situations, which is kind of play to the vote bank. Do you think something that happened in UPA 1 and 2 is also happening in Kerala?
You put it rightly. Rather, I would go one step ahead. Something which happened in UPA 1 and 2 was not just not being proactive, it was one step ahead of being supportive, standing by the side of terrorists. You had many leaders who had raised the questions about Batla House, that Sonia Gandhi could not sleep. There also I stand vindicated, and Batla House is a case which was the most unfortunate. We have had leaders who would walk into Home Minister's office, same Digvijay Singh, and say that release the 16 people from Azamgarh, lodged in Gujarat jail, who have been, all of them have been convicted now, so that they can be taken on transit remand to Delhi for Delhi blast 13 September. These have happened, I have written it in my book. So there are many such cases. So UPA 1 and 2 were supportive of these people who are trying to run amok in the country. Same thing is happening in Kerala today. The neighboring state of Tamil Nadu is no better. They also are walking along with them. At least in many places it is happening. That's the reason I would rather say, when you ask me the question, when I said what is the proof, there are so many other proofs beyond this. In 70s, the INC by design declared a community as militants, a community which had which had around 30% in the Indian Defence Forces in 1971, turned against the country in 1976.
Correct.
What happened in that? They used to take pride that from my village there are more shaheeds. Similar thing they wanted to attempt in 2005-6. But somehow it failed because fortunately some good officers were there. One of the finest officers from Kerala was the Joint Secretary, Internal Security at that time, and that officer was firmly against this. So with that, but the danger is still lurking under your head. With so much of funding coming into this place, and it can be seen, it can be traced. It requires a little bit of digital assistance to trace it. I think Kerala is very close to becoming the next Kashmir. Land is already being taken away. As they say, leave and believe, or whatever it is. Leave, convert, or leave your women behind. They are already doing with your girls, college-going girls. Everybody has to be sensitized. First, they have to accept the existence of the problem. The problem exists. There is no illusion. It exists all around you. I am not provoking you. I am only sensitizing you. We need to be sensitized about the problem that exists, and that is also the reason why we need to be very, very alert. Keep your eyes open. Thank you.
Mr. Mani, wonderful. 1 hour just flew past by, and we will take a few questions. But what Mr. Mani said was very, very clear. the kind of information that is there with the government, both the government of India and the government of Kerala, is huge. There are digital footprints everywhere. Every rupee that goes through the system is accounted for. But Kerala government, they accept India. They are not accepting the fact that there is a terror module working in Kerala. As we speak today, there are 18 Malayalis in jails in UAE on terrorism charges. They have not been released for the last 11 years. 18 of them. The government of UAE, all the Gulf governments are very strict about terrorism, unlike our governments, which our courts give bail to everybody. But as Mr. Mani said, and you should read that in his book, wonderful way in which he constructed the entire 26/11 attack, and that is why I asked him, the local support system that exists within Kerala is extremely dangerous, and we will see that happening. So any questions, we'll be more than happy. 3 questions we will take, and if the mic can just go around, please lift your hand. There's a gentleman there. Can we give this mic to him? Somebody, yes sir, you can come up here. I don't think the volunteers to just, hello.
So, you are aware of those 4 girls who were in the Afghan prison, the Kerala girls who were in the Afghan prison when the previous government was there. And now once the Taliban has taken over, these 4 seem to have disappeared into thin air, and nobody in the public, in the press wants to talk about them at all.
See, Taliban has taken over, and you know what kind of ecosystem they support. To locate that, they don't have database on their own girls. Do you expect them to be sharing information on missing girls from Kerala? I don't think. Also, so far Taliban, the instrumentalities have also to be established. I do not know how much of recognition we have given to Taliban, what is the relationship, a mutual legal assistance treaty, and all these have to be signed. Without this instrumentality, you cannot even ask them, and if you ask them, they will go and behead those girls or put them as sex slaves somewhere. It is in their interest that wherever they are hiding, let them hide. Thank you.
Yes.
Namaste, sir. My Durga Das, Kerala, Trivandrum. I am coming from Qatar, actually, to attend the Hindu Mahasammelanam. Actually, my Qatar में है, Gulf countries में ज़्यादा तक terrorist fund is coming, and I want to know that why, like more of the community, they are supporting from the Kerala businessmen. They are safe. They created their own land as their safe land. They don't need if India government or Kerala government, anyone will do anything. Also, they have all the hypermarket, exchange, all the facilities, everything there. But unfortunately, now second Naik also, he also now there that got the news. So how means we are not secure. I so many things, incidents I felt there. So many Kerala ladies also, they are bringing there by Kerala, this north district people, converting and putting into there some using for sex workers and everything. So many incidents I report to the this embassy and everything, but they are saying also they cannot do anything. This is all government have to do. So like we need some solution for the thing. Thank you, sir.
The solution is at home. You have to sensitize your children. They will try to target you. It is there by design. They are recruiting basically love jihad. Most of them land up as sex slaves in ISIS. Most of them land up in Syria, Libya, and all sorts of places where they would not even imagine. The irony is educational system. The irony is early signs should be picked up. Conversions happen, early signs. In northern Kerala, it is difficult, but still, you have to put up. If you want to live there, you have to put up. That is how the strong ecosystem is working. But you don't train your children accordingly. to identify that ecosystem, there are certain factors. Our friend Shefali spoke about the secular values instead of basic values, simpler values. You are talking them, teaching them secularism, liberalism, and all that. That is the breeding ground for this type of recruitment by the jihadis. So Shefali had already touched upon that. That we are already giving them a breeding ground. With this, you are already, then later on when they are recruited and all, like Akhila's parents, you go to this court and that court and say this is what, and what happened to the fate of Akhila, most of you may be knowing more than what I know about that. So that is the situation. The problem lies with the family. See, basically family is the foundation of the Indian, the Sanatana society. They are already, the Western conspiracy is already to break the family. The families are breaking down. And that is also giving a taking out a very important insurance cover out of us. So these are all facts. So there are larger questions. Somebody like Shefali or rather Mohandas can answer with Hindutva. I think Mohandas is talking on that. He can answer that. These type of ecosystem cannot grow if you are strong. That is what is the issue.
You can actually ask Mr. Mani questions in Malayalam because originally his father hailed from Ottapalam. He was born in Ottapalam. Oh, yeah, he was born in Ottapalam. So you can ask him. He understands questions in Malayalam, but of course he'll answer. Any more questions, please? Yes.
So when demonetization happened, if demonetization was happened, media was celebrating that 99% of the money came back. This was a failure. So especially Kerala media. So there was a news that like a container came from somewhere, and like the case was filed by I think Kumaran Rajasekharan sir. The case disappeared into thin air. So do you think the demonetization has affected the terrorists in many ways?
Has the demonetization affected?
Currency. Fake currency was one of the instrumentalities of terror funding. Okay. It used to be the fake currency, Indian currency used to be printed in Pakistan. The owner of the printing press was one Javed Khanini. Both, he had two presses, one in Peshawar, one in Karachi. 8th of November 2016, demonetization happened. Okay? 4th of December 2016, Javed Khanini was found dead in suspicious circumstances. Are you connecting the two dots? Because he was printing the fake currency notes on behalf of the ISI to be pushed into India. When demonetization happened, the date was a very relevant date, very significant date. So the amount of money which he might have fake, that all became useless.
They say he was bumped off by the ISI.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the wonderful session, Mr. Mani. I know you choose your words very carefully. And, he's very diplomatic with his words because some of the words, because there is a webcast going on, can go outside this hall and create problems under the Official Secrets Acts, which he's still bound by. And he has to choose his words very carefully. But in his book, The Myth of Hindu Terror, and his latest book, the second book, Deception, there's a lot of details that go into in terms of the documentation. I think Sandeep Unithan wrote in great detail about the 2611. I remember that story. And Mr. Mani actually has written in detail from official records. Believe it or not, after the 2611 happened and when this entire thing blew up, saying that it was an arranged match between Pakistan's ISI and the UPA government, somebody tried to kill Mr. Mani. He was tried on the road, he was almost run over by a truck, and that fact was accepted by the Delhi police. The matter is still under investigation. We don't know who did it, who tried to kill him, who tried to kill that story. But ladies and gentlemen, I think he deserves a great round of applause, not for being just here, but for the fact that he stood up and exposed Shivraj Patil, Digvijay Singh, P. Chidambaram. He stood up to these powerful ministers. He was shunted out of the cabinet, of the cabinet secretariat. He was shunted out of Ministry of Home Affairs into an insignificant posting, but he still did not accept. He said, I will stand by what I said. I will not sign any fake documents which implicate the genuine Hindus. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a big story for those of us in this particular Sammelan here today to learn how the Congress ecosystem tried to bring in a concept called Hindu terror. And in Kerala, especially as Mr. Mani spoke, and you can speak to him later on once he's off the stage, about how money is being used to create the next Kashmir. Don't be surprised if this state becomes an Islamic republic in another 50 years. It's possible. And that is exactly what the Ministry of Home Affairs is worried about. But the Kerala government is not worried at all. Thank you for being here. It was a wonderful session, and I think it deserves a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Mani. Thank you for being here. Thank you, sir.